Hey guys, it's Matt from Pure MTG here. I've got an exciting deck list to show you guys that I kind of spawned from making a Sythis, the Harvest Hand enchantment deck. That's this one over here. She's very strong, probably the best Enchantress deck commander that I know of, and at least that I've played, and I've only played her. But she's clearly the best because she costs 2 mana, and this would be the commander that I would highly recommend using if you're not limited like I am. However, this deck list is going to be using Selvala because I was restricted to the pre-con restrictions that we have for the Jake and Joel Are Magic's tournament rules. Every league you can join in, and if you're a patron of them, you can join and play a commander game weekly, leagues. So the restriction this month is any pre-con from Zendikar Rising until current. And I was able to pick out Selvala Explore Return. I basically was just like, please have any pre-con with a legendary creature in that time zone that is white and green that is cheap. And I came across Selvala Explore Returned. So, like I said, Sythis Harvest Hand would be the best in my opinion to start with if you're not restricted like I am. However, I will say that Selvala Explorer Returned is not terrible. So what she does, she's a green, a white, and a colorless. It's a 2/4, so it's got a big butt. However, a lot of times you're going to be tapping her, so like the big butt's not that important. But what it does is, on your turn, when you can tap it, so you can tap her. Each player reveals the top card of their library. For each non-land card revealed this way, add green, and you gain 1 life. Then each player draws a card. So yes, you do allow your opponents to draw a card. However, you get to see what they draw, you gain a life, and you gain a green mana if it's a non-land. So you get a lot of benefits, a lot of upside, a lot of ramp, and life gain, and it's not too big a deal to give opponent's card draw. Like it is, in like a very competitive format, I would say it's probably not great. But if you're very casual, I would say that this is the casual version of the deck, because when I played the Sythis deck, it was very, very, very strong without a budget. And with her as the commander, it basically was like a guaranteed draw engine anytime you needed it. Like on turn 2, you almost always had it. And then by turn 3, you're like drawing a bunch of cards a turn because she's got built-in draw engine. So you run enough enchantments and boom, there you go. This, however, you still typically want to play her on turn 2 if you can for Selvala. You want to kind of mulligan until you have like a mana dork or a enchantment land, enchantment 1 mana ramper. Because you want to start drawing as fast as you can. And also ramping. So yeah, it's a very good draw engine that lets your opponents draw, but it does ramp you and it gains you life. So very strong. And I did win my first week, so I mean it was not even close. It was very, very strong. But that's kind of just enchantments in general. So the first guy here is a Johnny's Chosen. This will be going over the creatures. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white cat creature token. The rest of that doesn't matter. But it's mainly just token generation, just to kind of like win via combat. This week gets removed in higher budgets. The Ajani's cat. They don't have flying, they don't have lifelink, they don't have anything. They're just basic 2/2s, so they're not great. Yeah. So it gets removed in the higher budgets, but it's pretty good for a budget. This is the $100 budget, by the way. Alseid of Life's Bounty, 1 mana, 1/1 artifact. Enchantment creature. And then it also has basically like a Mother of Runes effect on it. So you can pay 1 colorless, sacrifice it, target creature or enchantment you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. The thing that's great about this is that it's a 1-drop enchantment, so you're most likely going to draw at least 1 card from it because you'll have one of your drawing engines on board, typically when you play it. But then it also protects one of your enchantments or your creatures. So pretty strong there. Arbor Elf is just a mana dork. Archon of Sun's Grace is the better Ajani's Chosen. 4 mana for a 3/4 flying lifelink. Pegasus creatures you control have lifelink, and it has Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you create a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. This is one of the win cons in the deck. Like you're gonna win via combat, you're gonna win via flying with this. And they all have lifelink, and they're all flying with evasion, so that's very solid. Another mana dork. Courser of Krufix, an enchantment creature, which is great. 2/4, which is also pretty great. For 3 mana, play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play lands from the top of your library, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain a life. or you do gain a life. So just a little bit of life gain, a little bit of playing, like being able to play lands off the top of your deck to kind of, you know, sort of draw them. It's pretty good. Then of course it being an enchantment creature is the main thing. Destiny Spinner, 1 green and a colorless for a 2/3. Creature and enchantment spells you control can't be countered, so she's an enchantment that potentially draws cards if you have any of the engines on the board, and also makes your stuff not being able to be countered is pretty good. The target land you control becomes an XX elemental creature token with trample and haste till end of turn, where X is the number of enchantments you control. Isn't too relevant, but it can be. I did win with it once in playtesting, but most of the time it's not really useful. But I mean, there are times where, I mean, it is a very big, it can be a very big enchantment. There's like over 40 enchantments in the deck. It's not too out of the question to have at least 20 on the field. So yeah, a 4-mana 20/20 trampling hasting creature isn't terrible. Eidolon of Blossoms, one of the big draw engines in the deck. There's a lot of these. You basically play all of them. Some of them are really, really expensive, so for the $100 budget you can't do, but for the higher budgets you can. So 4 mana for a 2/2 enchantment creature, so it triggers off of the other. It triggers off itself, and it triggers off of any other Enchantress creatures or effects that you have. When it enters the battlefield, or another enchantment enters the battlefield on your control, you draw a card. Elvish Mystic, another mana dork. Eternal Witness. This is kind of just like a staple in most green decks. It just allows you to get something back from your graveyard if something gets removed, and you can kind of recur it. Heliod's Pilgrim. This we'll talk about later, but it allows you to go fetch an aura from your library into your hand. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Jukai Naturalist, green-white for a 2/2 enchantment creature, human monk. He's a life-linking 2/2 that makes your enchantments cast 1 less to cast. This is mainly in here because, I mean, the reduction's nice, but it is a 2-mana 2/2 life-linking enchantment creature, so it triggers off of any of the enchantment stuff that you need, and also there is the god that'll, anytime you cast a creature, go get a land, Karametra. So, a little bit of combo there, or synergy. Hey, speaking of Karametra, God of Harvests, 5 mana for 6/7. This is the most expensive card in the game, in the deck, except for one other card, I think. So it's a 6/7 indestructible as long as your devotion to green and white is less than 7. It isn't a creature, but it is an enchantment, so you'll be able to draw a card, hopefully, or make a token, or whatever. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a forest or plains. It goes to the battlefield tapped, you shuffle your library. So it gives you a little bit of ramping. It is a big creature. You'll have the devotion almost all the time, unless like there's a lot of removal. And also being able to, it being an enchantment triggers all the enchantment stuff. So I could see this being removed because it is a 5-drop. It is pretty expensive, but Selvala does ramp, so it kind of cuts down on that. Katilda Dawnhart, Martyr is insane. So white, colorless, star. It's a flying, life-linking protection from vampires, and our power and toughness is equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. And so it counts. It comes out as a 1/1 if there's nothing on the field. That's not great for a 3-mana 1/1 flying lifelinker, but you're going to have most likely a ton of enchantments on the field, or you'll start playing a ton of enchantments, and it starts getting pumped. And it's a flying lifelinker, pretty good. But also it has Disturb on the other side. Katilda's Rising Dawn, enchant creature. You can cast this from your graveyard with Disturbed. Enchant creature has flying life. It basically has what she has on her front, but it's also an enchantment, so it counts as casting any enchantment stuff. And it enters the battlefield for enchantments, all that kind of stuff. So it's a double purpose. So you've got your crazy creature on the front. Say they remove it, they kill it, goes to the graveyard. You can now cast an enchantment, draw some cards, get the same benefit, make one of your creatures a monster, and yeah, pretty good. Llanowar Elf's pretty good. Mana Dork. Mesa Enchantress, one of the enchantresses to draw cards anytime you cast an enchantment spell. You try, like I said, you try to play all of them. Sanctum Weaver, very big ramp. So it's a 2-mana 0/2, big mana dork. Add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of enchantments you control. So it's guaranteed going to at least do 1 because it is an enchantment creature itself. Yeah, very, very strong. It typically it taps for like 5, 10, 15. It's pretty good. Satyr Enchanter is just another enchantress, which allows you to draw cards when you play an enchantment. Sythis Champion is the same, but slightly better because it's Constellation. It's whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield, not when you're cast. So it gets a 1/1 counter, and you draw a card every time that happens. So she gets pretty big. I mean, the first game that I played her in the league, she was like a 12-12, I think, or something. It was nutty. Well, a 12-15. But yeah, very strong card there. Sythis Harvest Hand, like I said, if you're not playing with the restriction, or if you don't want to go too super try hard, because like I said, Sythis is insane. Sythis is nutty. It's an enchantment creature herself. Whenever you cast, you draw a card and you gain a life. Your friends may not like you if you play this Enchantress deck because it is super strong. I went like many games without losing against decks that were way more budget than I was because it's very, very strong. Enchantments in general are pretty hard to remove if you're not playing the right colors. So the deck kind of runs wild, and it's hard to maintain and keep in control. So yeah, if you want to play, like I said, with Selvala, you're probably better off is the commander, just to kind of like not make your friends hate you so much, because they're drawing cards from your commander. They don't feel so bad. Plus, Selvala doesn't get removed as often because they're drawing cards from it. So Sythis gets removed on spot most of the time. So it's kind of like, eh. But like I said, Sythis is the best commander. But another Enchantress that whenever you cast an enchantment, you draw a card, but you also gain a life. Rooted Enchantress, another Enchantress. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you draw a card. Weaver of Harmony, 2 mana, 2/2. It is an enchantment creature, which is great. Other enchantment creatures you control get +1/+1. Not that relevant, but it does have, with a green and tap it, copy target activated or triggered ability you control from an enchantment source. You may choose new targets for the copy. Once we get to the enchantment section, you'll see why this is very good for a green, single green, and a tap. Approach of the Second Sun. Because there's so much card draw in the deck, you can do the Approach of the Second Sun alternate win con, or if you cast this, it goes to the 7th card down, and then because you have so much card draw, it only typically takes 1 or 2 enchantments to cast, and then you redraw this, and then you just win. It's a lot harder to do than the standard, like Narset's Reversal, cast this, Narset's Reversal, win the game. But, we're in white-green, so I saw the ability to, with so much card draw, it doesn't make sense not to run Approach. That's how I won the first game of the league. But I could have won via combat. Probably should have won via combat, because in the league, there's like the point structure gets a little weird when you win with out of combat. What is it? Out of combat alternate win cons. But so yeah, just another alternate win con, just a way to kind of win the game. Austere Command is just one of the board wipes in here. There's also Wrath of God. You need 2 board wipes. This one's pretty nice because the deck doesn't run artifacts, so you can do Destroy All Artifacts pretty easily. You probably will never want to pick Destroy All Enchantments or Destroy All Creatures with mana value 3 or less. The 2 modes you'll almost exclusively pick are Destroy All Artifacts and Destroy All Creatures with mana value 4 or greater. There's not many creatures in this deck that are 4 or mana value 3 or 4 or greater. I think there's like 1 or 2. So it almost never kills your stuff, and it kills all of their stuff. So Austere Command is pretty solid. It is 6 mana, but that's typically not that difficult to get to. Idyllic Tutor, obviously just a standard tutor, but it's an enchantment tutor, which is fantastic, and it's only 3 mana, so it's not bad. It goes to your hand, which is great. It's only $5. Also great. Resurgent Belief. This is... it's okay. It is suspend too. There's no other way to cast it, which is unfortunate in this deck. But it returns all enchantments from your graveyard to your hand, but you have to suspend it so it goes off in 2 turns. It's the reason why I say it's not that great, like it's good, like obviously getting all your stuff back is great, but it gives your opponents 2 turns to either deal with your graveyard, deal with you, and it's just, it's just kind of a strange card, like you want to cast it fairly early, so like you could try to like maybe try to time it to where like you think they might destroy all your stuff, so you kind of like have like a safety net, so then they don't. Or they do anyways, and then it all comes back. I don't know. Like I said, it's a strange card. Suspend's weird. Wrath of God, just another board wipe. There are times where you can board wipe where it doesn't affect you too much. Maybe you've got like token generation, and then like an enchantment version, and the other stuff on the field is just nutty, and you gotta get you just need a board wipe. It's just the flexibility to have one is nice. Beast Within, just to destroy target permanent. They get a 3/3 beast. We don't really care about the 3/3 beast. Just being able to destroy any permanent. Kind of required in Magic the Gathering. Cosmic Intervention, very, very good card. Kind of like anti-board wipe. You could also, Wrath of God, and then in response, Cosmic Intervention, so that all your stuff comes back. But yeah, it's an instant that says, for 4 mana, If a permanent you control would be put into a graveyard from the battlefield this turn, exile it instead, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So any of the constellations will all trigger again from any of the enchantments that enter the battlefield, which is really awesome. Obviously, you save all your stuff, which is great. You can foretell it so that you can kind of make it... It's the same cost, so it's never... You should never not foretell it unless you just don't want to tell people that you have it in your hand. But overall, fantastic card. Very solid. Path to Exile, just removal. You need it. Swords of Plowshare, same thing. It's just removal, and you need it. Abundance is a card that I struggle with. It's 4 mana. I think I removed it in the next $150 version. I'm gonna have a version for every $50. So you start with $100, then 150, 200, 250. And I think that's the end of that. Yeah, there's 4 weeks, so it'll end at about 250, and then I'll probably have a version that is just without a budget, which equates only to about $1,000. And I say only, but like that's including 2 cards that you don't really need. You could probably be about 1,500 if like you include Gaia's Cradle. But like Sarah's Sanctum is one of the cards, like $280, and then Resurrect is the other one. It's like another $100. So you can get like minus $300-400 off that 1,000. Pretty easily get that budget down, you know, where it's not too bad. But yeah, Abundance, with it being 4 mana, it is a good effect. If you would draw a card, you may instead choose land or non-land and reveal cards from the top of your library. Until you reveal one of the chosen kind, you put that card into your hand, put all their cards revealed at the bottom of the library in any order. It is a good effect. It's just in this deck, I kind of wanted, like, I don't know. It's maybe not worth taking out, but I took it out for the second week. It's just 4 mana is a lot. It eats a lot of your turn. Abundant Growth, this is just an enchanted land. It draws a card, so it replaces itself, which is nice. You do run a couple of colorless lands, so this can enchant that. And I say a couple, I mean, I think just 1 Reliquary Tower. But there are times where like I need more white sources. So this allowing you to make any land tap for any mana of any color, which is nice. But like I said, it also replaces itself, and because it's an enchantment, it's very cheap. So if you top deck it and you have like 2 or 3 of your Enchantresses on the battlefield, you're drawing 3 cards for 1. So Ancestral Vision, you know, pretty good. Ancestral Mask, this card is pretty nutty. It's 3 mana, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield. Including your opponents as well. The very first game, I had a 39/39 with this on the battlefield, and it did get pathed, but it would have done some real big damage. It would have one-shot somebody, which was pretty cool. Yeah, so pretty solid card. Just a way to do some beats in. Aura Shards is really, really fun. So it's a green-white colorless. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Notice that it is a may, so that's very good. Just removal for artifacts and enchantments is pretty necessary. So having like an on board just whenever you want, make a token and nuke something, make a creature nuke something, or cast a creature nuke something, pretty good. Aura of Silence, white colorless, artifacts and enchantment spells your opponent's cast cost 2 more to cast. Then you can sacrifice it and destroy target artifact or enchantment. There's a decent bit of artifact and enchantment removal or artifact and enchantment hate in this deck. Because you don't run any artifacts, or I don't run any artifacts in this deck at all. So a card like Stony Silence that we'll get to is like just like backbreaking for your opponents, but it literally hurts you not at all. Very good upside there. And this making your artifacts or your opponent's artifacts or enchantments cost 2 more to cast is pretty solid. And of course, you're going to be drawing cards from all your enchantresses. Pretty good. Banishing Light, basically just O-Ring, Oblivion Ring. Whenever it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Banishing Light leaves the battlefield. There's a better version of this called Grasp of Fate, which is basically you pick something from each opponent, and it's the same mana cost, but it's double white colorless. It's just it costs like $6. So in this version, this budget version, I figured Banishing Light was better. But if you have no budget, then Grasp of Fate is definitely better. Cleric Class is really, really cheap. It's only 1 white for an enchantment, so you're going to draw a bunch of cards, hopefully, if you have any Enchantresses out. At the very least, replaces itself. And then if you would gain life, you gain that much life +1 instead. Well, if Selvala reads, you gain 1 life for each non-land card revealed this way. I'm not 100% sure if those are separate triggers, but you'll at the very least gain 1 more life, which is pretty awesome. You also can level it up for 4 mana. Whenever you gain life, put a counter on target creature you control. Pretty good. Selvala going to be gaining life at least once a turn. Very rarely do you ever whiff. I don't think I've ever done it yet. And I've played the deck at least 10 times, so pretty good. And then for 5 mana, when it becomes level 3, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain life equal to its toughness. So it's kind of like an Eternal Witness on a stick. I mean, it does a bunch of other stuff too, so it's pretty nice. You've got Darksteel Mutation. This is just removal. This one's pretty brutal because since it's an enchantment removal, you're going to be hopefully drawing a card, at least 1 card, maybe more, maybe making some Pegasus, maybe making some Cats, maybe making some Spirits. We'll get to that one in a minute here. But it also just shuts down like a commander, and like it just sits there, indestructible, can do nothing, loses everything. It's pretty good. Kind of a hateful card, but you know you're playing to win, so got to play the hateful stuff. Druid Class. Whenever it's an enchantment for 2. Whenever a landfall enters the whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. You can pay 3 mana to allow you to play an additional land on each of your turns, which is pretty nice. And then the 5th level 3, probably never do it, realistically. But you can pay 5 mana and target land becomes a creature with haste, and power toughness equals the number of lands you control. It's kind of whatever, but the first 2 abilities are pretty nice. Enchantress's Presence. This is the Enchantress on an enchantment. Why not? So you draw a card whenever you cast an enchantment spell. Ethereal Armor. This one is like the Ancestral Mask, but is only +1/+1 instead of +2/+2. For each enchantment you control, counts itself. The other one does not. And it gives the creature first strike, which is pretty nice. On average, this is like +5 to +10, sometimes higher. So it's pretty good. Fertile Ground, this is just a ramp, kind of like it's an enchantment rampant growth, kind of. So for 2 mana, enchant land. Whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional mana of any 1 color. So you can enchant 1 land, and then kind of pays for itself a little bit, and pays for itself over some turns. But with it being an enchantment, you know, it hopefully will draw you some cards as well. Ghostly Prison. This is kind of like a pillow fort a little bit. There's the 2 of them, Ghostly Prison and Sphere of Safety. Because you are drawing a bunch of cards and gaining some life, you'll probably be a target because you'll have the enchantments that they hate, and they can't deal with the enchantments, so they're just going to try to deal with you. So you need these cards. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each attacking creature they control that's attacking you. It's not a guarantee that they won't attack you, but if they are paying the mana into it, hopefully you're not dead, but hopefully it slows them down enough to where they have to forego doing something dangerous that you can hopefully recover the next turn. Gift of Paradise. This one is just kind of okay. 3 mana, enchant land. You gain 3 life. It's kind of nice, but then enchanted land has adds 2 of mana of any color. It doesn't provide additional mana. It just makes the land tap for 2 additional colors. So this ends up getting removed later on, but because it's the budget version, it's a very cheap, decent card. It is ramping, so not too bad. Ground Seal. You don't really target the graveyard almost at all in this deck, in this version. So when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Very nice that it replaces itself. That's great. And then cards in graveyards can't be the target of spells or abilities. This is great for Scavenging Ooze and Bajuku Bog, and, well, I think they might be able to do Bajuku Bog as a target player. But either way, anything that targets anything in the graveyard, yeah, stop it. Because I think you only have Eternal Witness. So in a really rare situation, if you really need to Eternal Witness, you could like blow up your own Ground Seal to then Eternal Witness something. Not the greatest situation, but that flexibility is there. Hallowed Haunting. This card is nutty. For 4 mana, it's an enchantment. As long as you control 7 or more enchantments, creatures you control have flying and vigilance. That's already pretty decent. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a white spirit cleric creature token with this creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of spirits you control. It's pretty good. There are actually a few other spirits in the deck that aren't, obviously created from this. So not only are you just going to create a 1/1 and then a 2/2 and then a 3/3 and then a 4/4, they all pump each other. They all get big. So when you have 10 out, they're all 10/10s. It gets pretty out of hand pretty quick, and then most likely you'll have 7 enchantments on the field, so they'll all be 10/10 flying vigilant creatures. Yeah, it gets out of hand very, very quickly. It's only a $6 card. Why not? It's a fantastic finisher One of the golden eggs for sure in this deck. Instill Energy is pretty good. 1 green mana. It's an enchantment, which is great. You draw a bunch of cards when you play it, most likely. And then enchanted creature can attack as though it had haste. And untap enchanted creature. Activate only during your turn and only once each turn. So the great thing about this is you're able to tap your commander for drawing a card, getting the mana, use Instill Energy, untap it, do it again. So you're drawing two cards a turn, generating hopefully a bunch of mana. But you can also put this on Sanctum Weaver, the one that taps for mana equal to the number of enchantments you control. That's a ton of extra mana. You can tap for 10 white and then untap it, tap for 10 green, and now you've got enough mana to do whatever the heck you want. So Instill Energy has a couple of creatures that's pretty good on. At the very least, you could put it on an attacker, attack, and then untap it so that you have a blocker. So it's not just used for the things that have a tap ability, but it's got some flexibility. Counter's Transformation. This is the same thing as Darksteel Ingot or Darksteel Mutation, but it does replace itself, which is really nice, and it loses all abilities and turns into a 3/3 elk instead of an indestructible creature. So, but the fact that you draw a card from casting it as well is pretty fantastic. And of course, you're playing your Enchantress deck, so you're gonna draw some more cards. Lignify is kind of the same thing. So 2 mana, they becomes an 0/4 with no abilities. This is kind of just for shutting off creatures that are very problematic, and then also being an enchantment that you can gain benefit from by casting, by making those Hallowed Haunting tokens, by making those cats, or by making those Pegasus, or making the Pegasi, or also drawing cards. Luminarch Ascension. This card, if you can get it out on turn 2, is pretty brutal. It's just 2 mana. It is $10 with a budget. Maybe it's not worth it in the super budget version. Maybe Grasp of Fate is just better. But if you get this out on turn 2, you can basically just start generating angels like crazy. But yeah, at the beginning of each opponent's end step, each opponent, so you'll have 3 opponents most likely, or more. And at the beginning of each opponent's end step, if you didn't lose life this turn, you may put a quest counter on Luminarch Ascension. And then if you have 4 quest counters, so that's just basically 1 rotation, 1 in 1 rotation, create a 4/4 angel for just paying 2 mana. You can only do it with 4 quest counters, but like I said, it's pretty easy. It does make you a target. So I wouldn't play this like right off the rip, unless you're playing against slower decks where they can't deal with it. But yeah, very strong card. Mana Bloom, I love this card. I love this card mainly in the Sythis version because it's very synergistic. Mana Bloom, it's a green and X. Mana Bloom enters the battlefield with X charge counters on it. Remove a charge counter from Mana Bloom. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Activate this ability only once each turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Mana Bloom has no charge counters on it, return it to its owner's hand. So you can see that you can play it. You could play it for 0 if you want. You could play it for 1 or play it for 0. Remove the counter before your next upkeep. It'll bounce back to your hand. So you're going to get the benefit of playing it. All the stuff that happens when you play it, whether you're drawing cards, creating Pegasus, whatever, all of those things happening. And then you're going to maybe use the charge counter from it, and then it bounces back to your hand, then you get to do the same thing next turn. So this is just kind of a reoccurring thing, which is really, really nice. Mirari's Wake, I mean, it's, green-white, so it has access to Mirari's Wake. Probably should play it. But yeah, for 5 mana, creatures you control get +1/+1. That's kind of whatever. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced. That's pretty good. Doubles all your mana. This deck can explode and draw tons of cards and play a lot of spells. So being able to play Mirari's Wake fairly early on is pretty insane. Selvala can get 3 to 4 green on a turn, and this could be 1 or 2 mana. Pretty good. So yeah, very cool. Overgrowth, this is just a better whatever the other enchantment was that I said you'll probably remove, the one that gains 3 life. This allows it to tap for an additional 2 mana. It doesn't just make it tap for 2. It taps for an additional 2 green for the same cost, which is pretty nice. Ranger Class. This one's pretty good. Pay 2 mana as an enchantment. You get a 2/2 green wolf. So you get a defender, which is pretty nice. 2/2 is not the most powerful, but for only 2 mana, you can level it up, and whenever you attack, you put a 1/1 counter on target attacking creature. So that can be a 3/3 wolf pretty easily. And then for 4 mana, you can look at the top card of your library anytime. anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. It's pretty good. Not terribly expensive overall. Pretty solid enchantment. Gives you something to sink your mana into if you're kind of drawn dead. Righteous Aura. This is kind of one of those ways to like stay alive, similar to like Sphere of Safety and Ghostly Prison. But for 1 white and a colorless, you can get an enchantment that says pay 1 white and pay 2 life. Prevent all damage to you from any one source. Pretty good. Seal of Cleansing. This is basically just destroy. It's naturalized on a stick without them gaining life, of course. So yeah, enchantment that you can sacrifice to destroy target artifact or enchantment. There's a green version as well. Seal of Primordium, Seal of Cleansing. They both do the exact same thing. But it's nice just to have like a constant reminder that you can kill whatever you want at any time. You can make deals. You can do some political stuff, or you could just play it and then immediately sack it if you need to. But because it's on an enchantment, it gives you all the benefits of our deck that gives all the crazy stuff. Sigil of the Empty Throne. Sigil of the Empty Throne is very, very solid. 5 mana is a little expensive, but what it does is pretty great. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a 4/4 angel with flying onto the battlefield. That's pretty good. You know, you can get tons of angels. Trust me. Angels, this and Hallowed Haunting are like the 2 win cons. If you don't win via Approach of the Second Sun, you can just fly over the Pegasus, the clerics, all of them, the spirits rather. Solitary Confinement. This card kind of boggles my brain. I can't even talk. Boggles my brain. It's 3 mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Solitary Confinement unless you discard a card. Yeah, okay. Skip your draw step. Okay, 2 downsides. Pretty bad. You have Shroud. That's a pretty good upside. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. That's also a very big upside. So in an Enchantress deck, you have a ton of draw. So most likely the 2 downsides up top don't really matter to you. I would not play this if you don't have a ton of draw. And even I would even make sure to go too far as say is like make sure you even have like a draw in hand. Like don't play all of your Enchantresses all at once. Like it might be tempting to like just keep playing all of them, but if like a board wipe happens and you have like nothing left in your hand, you have a bunch of enchantments, but you don't have any ways to like replace them, it starts feeling bad. So I would only keep like two on the field at a time. Keep 1 in the pocket. Yeah, but otherwise, Solitary Confinement is a way to like not lose the game very easily. This with Sterling Grove, so Solitary Confinement will have Shroud. You'll have Shroud. Greater Auramancy is another card that gives all your enchantment Shroud, or maybe even all your permanents. I think it might just be enchantments, but yeah, it's a pretty good lock. Sphere of Safety, we've talked about this, but specifically, creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays X for each of those creatures, or X is the number of enchantments you control. The deck runs about 45 enchantments, so you'll on average have, I've seen as low as 7 to 15 to 20. So they're going to have to pay that per creature if they don't get rid of Sphere of Safety. It's a good bubble card. It's only $3. It is 5 mana, a little expensive, but like again, Selvala ramps pretty well. White-green in general just more ramps, so not too bad. Speaking of Sterling Grove, other enchantments you control have Shroud. Pretty good. You can sacrifice Sterling Grove, search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it, and put the card on top of it. I've done this before. If you really need to get like, I've done the sacrifice this to go get a Solitary Confinement, so I didn't die the next turn, and it actually won me the game. So if they have, they need to have ways to get rid of all of your stuff, and like you keep playing things that they hate, and they have to kind of decide whether they get rid of the Hallowed Haunting, and then if they get rid of the Hallowed Haunting, then they can't get rid of the Solitary Confinement. So it's like kind of like, there's just so many powerful things in enchantments that you get to play all of them. It's great. Stony Silence. Activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. All mana rocks, all treasures, all clues, all whatever. They're all gone. You don't play them. So, great. This card is kind of hateful. It shuts off entire decks. The nice thing about that is it doesn't affect you, and it's not that big a deal if they get rid of it. And the nice thing about that is that it's like they're going to hate it. They're going to try to do whatever it takes to get rid of it. And then that means that the next thing that you land that's better, like Hallowed Haunting, has 1 less removal towards it. So, pretty good. Whip Silk. This card is funny. On the surface, it doesn't look like it does anything, but enchanted creature has reach. It's pretty it's pretty okay, mediocre, 1 mana, kind of like whatever. Like I'd rather play Rancor, 2-0 and Trample. It's pretty good. However, it has pay a green, return Whip Silk to its owner's hand. So that means for 2 green, if you have any enchantresses on the field, you can play it, draw however many cards you got for the enchantresses, and then bounce it back to your hand, and then do it again, and then bounce it back to your hand. And you're making clerics, spirits. I think they're spirit clerics. You're making spirit clerics. You're making Pegasi. You're making Pegasuses. You're making cats. 2 mana, pretty good. Wild Growth. This card's very good. It's basically a mana dork. So like this 2 land allows you to play Selvala on turn 2, which is great. Just lets the land tap for an additional green. And now we're into the land. Canopy Vista, just a very cheap dual land, and you'll have tons of basic lands, so pretty good. Command Tower should be in probably every commander deck. It runs like 15 forests. It runs one of these. Again, you're gonna probably have tons of land in the deck, so I think there's like 30 basics. Like 15 plains, a reliquary tower, and then that's the considering. And then here's the breakdown of the lands. 34 lands, a little light on lands, but because the mana curve is pretty low, if you look at the mana curve here, average lands 2.4. Where's the mana curve? Did I pass it? Here it is. Mana value. So 1.74 with lands and 2.58 without. 2.58 without allows you to get opening hands of average of 2.4 lands in hand. That's good enough. With the mulligans being fairly loose, especially in a league where you get 1 for free. I think everybody gets 1 for free mostly. You can mulligan pretty aggressively and get the good hands that you need. There's some cards in the considering section. This was from the initial Enchantress deck that I had. Instead of removing all of them, I just kind of pushed them all to considering. So that if you have no budget constraints, you can kind of look down in here and get the crazy good stuff like a Greater Oromancies. Other enchantments you control have enchanted creatures have Shroud. So basically just Sterling Grove, but it's slightly better. Burgeoning is also really, really good. Carpet of Flowers is great. Exploration, Sylvan Library, Smothering Tides. There's all kinds of great enchantments that are fantastic. And obviously lands and whatnot. Sir Sanctum is fantastic. You get 1 white for every enchantment. It's insane. It's also $288 and on the reserve list. Will never be reverted again, so that's sad. But, it is what it is. But if you have any questions, make sure to put them down in the comment section below. And hope you guys enjoyed. This deck is super, super fun. And honestly, probably one of my most favorite decks. It's probably one of the most successful decks. Very strong. Enchantments are very, very strong. This could change depending on what group you're in. Maybe you're in a group that plays a bunch of green and has access to enchantment removal, and maybe this deck's not that strong in your play group. But my play group, they do not have a ton of enchantment removal, so it feels pretty good. Thanks for watching, everybody, and see you next time.